Hello folks, it is time for some more hobby nightmares. Hope you're having a wonderful day as we get started with a brand new week. Hope everything's going well for you. Let's jump in, shall we, with Ian. How's it going, Ian? Hope everything's going well. He says, good day, North. A bit of a tale here, slightly different to the usual fare, so I hope it's suitable for your fine channel. I've been wargaming since the early 2000s, initially playing 40k, Iron Hands, at a local gaming club at called the Bearded Snot, love the name, with my friend Paul. I've always got to ask, in terms of Iron Hands, right, they never really had much background back then, in the early 2000s, so what got you into playing Iron Hands, right? I always think that, like, these days, every single chapter has so much in terms of background lore and things that you're spoilt for choice on what you want to go into. Like, back in the early 2000s, what got you into a chapter? Was it just the colour scheme? Because there wasn't that much lore running around, right? I remember the War for Badab was such a sea change in lore, right? It was such a massive shift into, right, now we're going to go into detail on Space Marine chapters, where they come from, what they do, how they fight, how they recruit, right? But before that, you know, even back then, the Horus Heresy was this wishy-washy thing that people kind of knew about but kind of didn't, right? I remember the Horus Heresy being an answer to a question in a crossword in a White Dwarf once, right? That's how little it was known. So, you know, what got you into different Space Marine chapters? If you know what got you into it in the early 2000s, comment section down below. Anyway, this, however, was rudely abrupted when, after Paul was a naughty boy, his wife-to-be smashed up his Dark Eldar army into far too many pieces to repair. The look on his face, as he was handed a box of bits, was a pure distraught, but we can all laugh at this now. Yeah, I mean, I'm really against a woman harming a man's personal property, but, like, if you've done something like that, yeah, you take it and you move on. Do you know what I mean? We both took a short break, but wargaming couldn't stay out of our lives for too long, as we were dragged back into the hobby and Warhammer Fantasy 8th Edition when it took hold. We found a different club not far from where we lived, and were pulled into it, where I spent too many years buying, building and painting armies, only to want the next best thing, and selling and starting from scratch. Over the life of 8th Edition, I played Chaos Warriors, Skaven, Orcs and Ogres, all fully painted, and enjoyed all of them on the tournament scene in the northwest of the UK. Hey! A couple of these were at Warhammer World, which were always great fun, and the bar prices weren't too bad back then. They are now. £6 for a pint, anyone? Yeah. Bugmans. The club was run by one person, and this was always an issue, but one that everybody chose to ignore as we rolled dice. Moved movement trays and often drank far too much as well, particularly at tournaments. This ended up at one tournament at Warhammer World with a sofa being broken in the bar as everybody jumped on top of an individual gamer who had said the wrong word, a pylon. I'm not going to sit here and say that it wasn't fun at times, even if there were always a bit of a niggle at the back of my mind as to how the club was being run and some people were treated at the club. Dude, how did you not get banned for, like, breaking property at Bugman's? To become an official member of this club, you had to prove yourself. I'm already out. Now this, to most, would mean on the tabletop rolling dice and winning games, but not for this club. This meant drinking yourself silly at a tournament and getting so drunk, yet still being able to play the following day. I played people who were being sick and running off to the toilet due to this. Again, I'll state, we all took part in this, followed the rules of the club, but that feeling was always there in the back of my mind that this wasn't quite right. Seeing also how some members were teased at club nights and pushed too far, felt so bad as people came along. Right, and let me read that bit again. It's a bit jumbly. Seeing also how some members were teased at club nights and pushed too far, felt so bad as people came along, paid their fees and bought beer and food from the club fridge. Where the money went, and were relevant taxes paid? Into the person running the club's pocket, of course. I still sit there thinking, why did I let this go on? The bullying of members, the forced drinking, the lack of any committee to keep the club on track, I suppose it was due to feeling that I wanted to play this game. I had to stick with this local community, as well as friends I had made within the club. Alright. Before we go any further, alright, this is the kind of thing that I would absolutely expect from like a rugby club. Do you know what I mean? Right? And in so being, if this is how you want to run your club, I've got no problem with that. Right? I don't. If this is the kind of club you're in, where it's like just men, absolutely. I think, Ian, you're losing a bit of in translation here. Do you know what I mean? Men really do go for each other. Do you know what I mean? Like, that's just how we are. You know? Now, there is a difference between being, say, you know, a bunch of lads ribbing on each other and like having a good time and throwing zingers back and forth. You know, that's one thing. I have seen a few guys who use this as an opportunity to just be unpleasant, right? That I'm with you on completely. But in terms of what you're describing, sometimes I think something might have got lost in translation here. This is just who these lads were, it seems to me. That they're doing pile-ons, they're tearing into each other verbally, but in a jovial way, right? They're hazing each other, they're drinking. This is just dudes being dudes, man, from what you've described to me. So, I don't know. Maybe you either need to lighten up, or maybe they were doing things that you haven't said. This is why I always say to people when they send in Hobby Nightmares, expand, expand, expand. Like, on the bits that I want to... Like, when you're explaining to me what your point is, expand on that, right? We don't need pages and pages of exposition. What we need is, what is your point? Expand on that. And your point here seems to be that these guys are being quite toxic, but what you've described isn't that toxic. It's dudes being dudes. Anybody who's been a part of a sports team will tell you, this is how dudes are. Do you know what I mean? Anyway. Things began to change with the release of Age of Sigmar, which fractioned what people played the game, and some like myself and friend Paul moved on to 40k 8th edition. I brought back the Iron Hands, and we all started learning and building this new system. We had others start up RPG games and bring new people to the club alongside Age of Sigmar and 40k. The owner, however, started making it hard for people to play unless they played Age of Sigmar, the system he stuck with and began tournament playing with. Soon, COVID hit. It obviously shut down the club for a period of time. However, the owner decided that he would open the club up when he could but only play for Age of Sigmar players. Alright? This is all done behind closed doors, and you could say he was within his rights, but again, it just didn't feel right. Eventually, however, the club reopened as the pandemic relaxed and my friend Paul returned to the game. Paul raised the issue of how the club was handled during lockdown, and the club's owner went off and unleashed a torrent of abuse at Paul, whilst others watched, with it ending with the fact that he should try running his own club. Okay. Alright. Paul, myself, and a few others from the club took this moment on as a challenge. We decided that we would indeed set up our own club and began the preparations. We knew from the start that we wanted it to be run by committee, that everyone should feel welcome, and we would allow any games to be played no matter what, as long as people came along, felt happy, and enjoyed themselves. We all told the owner of the old club, and hoped that he would understand what we were doing, and eventually we could have inter-club tournaments and link together. This wasn't to be, as he essentially blocked anybody who was aligned who was aligned to the new club and cut them out of his life. If he found out that anybody was going to the new club, then they were barred from his club. It was all very pathetic, but slowly people started to move over and join in our new club. We called the club Dice and Bolter, and had initially 7 committee members, which has now grown. We've gone from nothing to over 200 Facebook members. We run 2 nights a week, which has grown from the initial 1, with up to 30 games playing each week with a mix of games including 40k, Lord of the Rings, Kill Team, Underworlds, multiple RPG sessions of multiple systems, and others. It's been a huge success, with everybody feeling welcome and travelling up to an hour to get to the club weekly. We run a few evenings a year where we give back to the members with free raffles, as well as an annual Christmas event where everybody plays the same game with food and drink all for free. See link below. Alright. One thing the old owner said before we started this club was that we were splitting an already small community. We've actually done the opposite and brought together so many people, creating new friendships along the way, creating a local community of happy dice rollers as we as a committee couldn't be happier. Thank you for reading us out and have a great 2025. Cheers, Ian. Alright, do you know what you did? Do you know what you did? You basically, what that guy was doing was he was creating a, shall we say, closed shop, right? He was creating a shop for him and his mates. This has happened before in Games Workshop stores, right? You know, I've seen many a Games Workshop store where really, really bad managers would basically say, my friends can play in the store, but nobody else can, right? Again, very, very, very silly, but there we are. That's just how it is. Did you want me to put this page on the channel? Because I will. Do you know what? I'm going to. Why not? Why not? There we go. It is Dyson Bolter in South Lakes. The South Lakes Tabletop Gaming Club. So if you're in the South Lakes somewhere in the UK, then you've now got a place to go and roll your dice and have some fun. That is a cool logo, by the way. I like that logo. That's pretty cool. That's awesome. Beer and Pretzel Gaming. Ooh, very nice. All right. Oh, it's in Kendal. All right, lovely. It's in Kendal. Anyway, let's move on, shall we, with our next hobby nightmare. If you're from Kendal, I used to go out with a girl from Cole. Yeah, North gets around, apparently. Next one. Let's have a little look. See here. All right. This one is more of an advice, which is fine. This one is from Fat Bastard. He says, Dear North, you can call me Fat Bastard, but I'm not from Holland. All right. I started playing 40k when the 10th edition just came out, so just a little over a year ago. Prior starting 40k, I've been tabletop RPG gaming my way around town, D&D, Call of Cthulhu, Pathfinder and the likes, for about 10 years, so I really enjoy narrative and campaign kinds of playstyles. I don't mind playing competitively, and I've joined a few tournaments here and there, but to be honest, I don't really give much thought about playing too competitively. Neither do I really care about winning or losing. I do like to have a strong list, but I don't actively try to win or min-max anything in my list. Recently, I've heard about campaigns and crusades, and I vaguely remember you've mentioned it a few times in your channel, and I'd like to give it a try. In addition, a few of us in the Warhammer 40k groups that I've joined have also been keen to try and give it a go, so I'm wondering if I can get some hints and tips from you to put me on out how to start a campaign, as well as where I can find good resources, freed or paid ones, so we can create an enjoyable campaign. Cheers, Fat Bastard. Okay, I'm gonna say, dude, if I can go on Google right now, alright, start a Warhammer, Warhammer 40,000 campaign. If I can do this, and Google gives me all the answers, I'm not gonna be impressed. Yeah, here we go. Dude, literally Goonhammer. It's right there. It's right there. The first thing that comes up on Google. How to run a 40k campaign, part 1, the basics, Goonhammer, done. Right? All the things you need are right there. They've even taken some, like, tree campaigns, they've taken narrative campaigns, and broken them down for you and how to run them. Like, one Google search. So that's what I would do. Use Google. There are tons on here, dude. Escalation campaigns, too, are a good way to do it. So, there are different kinds of campaigns. You've got your narrative campaigns, which is literally you're writing a scenario for your players and, you know, what's coming up next and what kind of game you're playing. They can be pretty easy to do. You can do tree campaigns, which is, you know, you have a patrol game here. If the attacker wins, we go on to this game. If the defender wins, we go on to this game. They're normally good for 2 or 3 players, right? Rather than big teams. But then you've got escalation campaigns, which is all about building an army. So you start off with 500 points, and then every single time you meet up, you add 500 points to your army. So, you know, once a month, I would say, you know, in like July, you got your 500 points, and then in August, you got 1,000 points, and away we go to the races, right? Those are just a few kinds of campaigns. There's even Matrix campaigns, which I didn't even know were a thing. Dude, I would say I'm going to put this in the comment section down below, but I'm not going to. Google, go on to Goonhammer, how to run a 40k campaign, part 1, the basics. They even go into different kinds of campaigns. They go right in under the hood. That's what you do. Just go on Google, and they can give you a far better answer than me. Because I've run a few, but, you know, these are really, really good websites. Use them. Use all your resources, man. Anyway, next is Kiwadan. And he says, good evening, sorry, Mr. Northern. Kiwadan back again to regale you and your viewers with a tale from the dark ages of technology, back before the time of cell phones. As per usual, the names have been changed where applicable. I'm happy with mine being used, but others may not be. This is a story about crime, burns, and Warhammer 40k. So grab your tea, get comfy, and let's begin. Ooh, this sounds promising. Alright, sound of this one. Alright. I've just been in my local Games Workshop store and talking about the domestic bliss of property maintenance with my friend. We were discussing the relative upsides of being in a position to hire people to do the work that we don't or are unable to do. And my friend reminded me about one incident back when we were substantially younger. Back in the early 2000s, my friend group and myself were heavy 40k enthusiasts. It was a common occurrence for us to be over at friends' houses, the local hobby stores, or at a gaming club, playing our little black hearts out. Between the 10 of us, we had a fair few armies collected. It might not all have been painted and based, but they were in a playable enough state. A lot of these games occurred under the traditional Kiwi hangover on a Sunday or Saturday afternoon, as we were all gainfully employed at the time. I was working at this time for the largest company in New Zealand in the mailroom, which, while was not really a glamorous position, it held a lot of perks. Cheaper landline rates, occasional promotional products not available to the public, and a decent, for a low-paying job, hourly rate. Unfortunately, it came with a set of working hours that were not really conducive to an active social life during the week. 6 AM to 6 PM with a 3-hour lunch in between might sound terrible, but when you're in your early 20s, it's definitely doable. Yeah, a 3-hour break in between all that, that's pretty cool. That's pretty cool. So, like, it's a 9-hour shift, basically, right? 9 hours of work, and 3 hours off. Dude, I'd be napping all the time. You'd never get me back to work. One of my friends, Sticky at the time, had no social filter. So his name's Sticky, okay? I wonder why he's called Sticky. We'll see. It would be quite common to find him hammering on my door at the oddest of times in the weekend, particularly if he'd got his grubby mitts on some female company the night before. This was one of those mornings. Sure enough, there was my mate pounding on my door at 8 AM with a smug smirk on his face. After telling me to get up, he regaled me with his tale of how he had gone home with another one of his workmates. "That's my 3rd red shirt," he crowed, as I dragged on some pants and a t-shirt. "Yeah, for fuck's sake, dude, do you even know what the time is?" I grumbled. He smiled. "Yeah, it's around 8 AM. Let's head down to the bakery before the others show up." I stopped in my tracks. "What do you mean, when the others show up?" "Don't you remember? We set up a multiplayer game for this morning, right?" He replied. It was at this point I noticed he had his carry case and one in each hand. William, Lambchops, Kango, and Reno. Dude, those are so New Zealand names, man. Apart from William. William's normal. But Lambchops, Kango, and Reno? How much of a Kiwi are you? This is ridiculous. William, Lambchops, Kango, and Reno are coming over for a 3v3. We organised it last weekend. You were supposed to be sorting out a table. Slipping on my shoes, I replayed the drunken conversation that I'd completely forgotten about and piped up. I don't think my desk is going to handle it. It might be a 6 foot long, but it's not 4 foot wide. Even at 6 foot long, it's not going to be big enough for 3 armies, dude. What time are the boys getting here? Okay. Mitre 10, I don't know what this means, man. Mitre 10, our building/lumber store chain in New Zealand, might be open. Okay, Mitre 10 is where you're working. Alright. Mitre 10 might be open. Sticky replied. Let's see what we can find first. Let's go, I'm hungry. I worked up an appetite last night. Alright, again, this guy is just, yeah. Really into women, but, you know, who isn't? So we toddled off to the local bakery, grabbed an assortment of pies, pastries, and sweets. The whole time, he was gloating about his conquest of the previous night. I did notice that there was a glint of shame behind his eyes. A lot of his workmates were lovely people. They tended to be a bit on the rounder side of plump. Right. Right. I'm onto this guy. Right. Give me 1 second. Sorry about that. My cat was clawing at the door like a maniac. I opened the door, and he's just sitting there looking at me. Like, what? Dude. But I've been friends with guys like this, right? They will come in crowing about, a conquest or whatever, and then you can just tell that, the girl that they got, right, that they went home with, either had really low self-esteem, like, is it just one of those girls, right, who just isn't, shall we say, you should know better. You get... Lads, I will tell you this, okay? Please listen to me. If you get a feeling when you're chatting to a woman in the bar, or at a party, or wherever it is, that going home with her might make her life worse, like her self-esteem, she's looking for just somebody so she doesn't feel lonely or rejected, or if she's going home with you so she can feel pretty, take a step back. Alright? Because you may get your rocks off. Most of the time you won't, because these women have like quite low self-esteem for a reason, but you may do all of that. Hooray, whatever. But you will end up like this guy, talking to it with your friend with shame behind your eyes, because you know it wasn't like, I'm going to use the word conquest here. I'm sorry, I don't want to use that word, but it's the only one I can think of, right? There was no challenge to this, is what I'm saying. Do you know what I mean? This was a girl who was literally on her last legs, who needs attention, there is no skill, there is no, you know what I'm saying, right? Like, there's no challenge to this. You've literally just gone and got a woman with low self-esteem and gone home with her. That's not a thing to brag about. I've had friends who've done this. And they will brag to you like they're some sort of Casanova. It's like, no, mate, she was vulnerable and lonely and really, really drunk, or really, really, had really low self-esteem, and you took advantage of it. That's not really... and again, she's an adult, and this is why I'm saying there's nothing technically wrong with what you did. It's two adults consenting, having fun. That's fine. But what I'm saying is, like, don't brag about it like it's some sort of like amazing conquest. It isn't, right? You were there. Do you know what I mean? You were there. Congratulations. Now I've also had friends who've walked into a room, picked the hottest looking girl in the room, gone straight over to her, started talking to her, and gone home with them at the end of the night. I've had friends like that. And do you know what? Those friends don't brag. They don't brag. They don't say anything. They don't have to. They don't have to. They say nothing. They never kiss and tell. They'll sneak off, and you won't see them again for the rest of the night. Right? Done it myself. Right? You sneak off. You don't want people... You're like, no. You guys have fun. I'm going to go now. Yeah, I'm going to go. See you later. Bye. And you go. And you don't say anything. Right? You just go. You turn up for breakfast the next day with your friends. And if they ask, you just say, yeah, it was a lovely evening. Went back to her place, spent the night, came here. Right? Have some class, is what I'm saying. Have some class. Anyway. It was a stunning morning for a Wellington summer. The sky was blue and clear. It was a good temperature, and we didn't have any wind at all, which is kind of rare for my city. Chatting as we walked, I noticed that Sticky had stopped dead in his tracks and was pointing through a chain-link fence. Hey, you see that? He said, indicating a work site. I looked through the fence, and sure enough, there was a pile of boards that might be about the right size. Oh no. Yeah, but dude, the fence... And look around, we're in the middle of the bloody suburbs, I replied. We're 2 minutes walk away from your place and nobody will see our faces. I was told. One sec. Sorry. You didn't get something caught in your throat? That was horrible. We're 2 minutes walk away from your place and nobody will see our faces, Sticky said. I thought about it, and being young, dumb and irresponsible, I agreed. We both quickly climbed over the fence and set about checking the offcuts and trying to guesstimate the size of the boards. After about 2 minutes, Sticky yelled out, "This should be about right, yeah?" I walked over to see what he had found. Sure enough, it was a 10-foot by 6-foot piece of MDF. Still, mostly unbent. Good find, mate. Let's get out of here before the cops show up. Sliding the sizable chunk of board under the fence, we climbed up over, lifted the board so it was between us and the road, and hightailed it back to my place. The first thing I did was break up the tape measure, size it up properly, and sure enough, it was almost perfect, a 10 by 6 foot board. Lifting my monstrous battleship of a desk out of my room and down the stairs, we set up the table in the backyard. The board was dirty, so without thinking, I covered it with a white sheet and proclaimed, "Looks like we're playing on a snow world today." Over the next 3 hours, our friends filtered in. Some of us hungover, some of us finishing their part-time work, and others just unable to show up to anything on time. By the time we had gotten our gaming preamble done, which consisted of another trip to the shopping centre for some shark and taters and fizzy from the local supermarket, the time was just past lunchtime. A slight breeze had picked up, but it was still a stunning day. Alright. We rolled for teams. Tango, Sticky and William were on one side of the table with their Imperial Guard, Eldar and Dark Angels, while Lambchops, Reno and myself were on the other with our Marines, Chaos, Undivided and World Eaters. Setting up on the longboard edges, we started the game. The battle raged fiercely for many hours, with the battle going in my side's favour initially thanks to me demon hopping in turn 1. Demon hopping was summoning one unit of demons, then lining the summoning template for further summons that turn closer to your opponent for successive summons, basically allowing you to cover huge distances and engaging your opponent in melee, tying up his shooting resources. But the battle swayed back to the other side's favour for the latter half. The whole time, however, the sun had been slowly ramping up, and it was a fairly typical 26-degree Kiwi summer day. I can't remember who won the game or even if we finished it, because the aftermath of the game is really the thing that stood out the most. Remember earlier how I said it was short weather? Shorts weather, you mean, like wearing shorts, yeah. Well, all my friends were wearing shorts and t-shirts, which is common apparel for our summers. My friends and I were an eclectic mix of nerddom, short, tall, fat, thin, pretty, not so pretty, but all of us, except for Kango, had one trait in common. We're all very white. The summer sun had done its work, and oh boy, had it done a number on us. All of us were literally cooked. We'd neglected to wear any sunscreen, and all of us were sporting lobster red flesh, where we were uncovered. William had been sporting a cap and sunnies, but by some miracle had gotten his face burnt as well. Kango was looking very, very flushed, but for a Maori lad, which is uncommon. My decision to cover the board to save the models getting dirty had been a sensible one, but I'd overlooked one scientific fact. White reflects light. As a result, we all had some burns in some very uncomfortable places. North, have you ever had the underneath of your chin burnt? How about the underneath of your nose? It's very unpleasant, to say the least. All of us were sporting bright red arms, and at least Reno, William and I had the benefit of having our faces turned towards the sun. The other three, however, did not. Shorts and glaring sun does not equal a fun time when the skin on the back of your legs gets so badly burned that you can't bend your knees without crying like a little girl. For the rest of my time living in that house, we always ended up playing in the garage, regardless of sun, rain, wind, cold and heat. Lambchops to this day remembers it as a result, still avoids the sun wherever possible, i.e. his choice in getting someone else to mow his lawn. Thanks for reading, Lorf. Sorry the crime section probably triggered you a little. Big thanks for the work you do. Enjoy the silly season, and I'll see what else I can dredge up for the memory banks in the future. Kiwi-dan. Kiwi-dan. So, no, it didn't. It didn't trigger me. I mean, I'll be honest. I'm just going to say this, right? I know there may be some builders who watch this channel. Every builder I know is on the fiddle a little bit, right? Like, I've known builders to build entire conservatories and extensions to their own houses, with like free leftover materials that they've had from jobs. So, you know, don't steal things. Don't steal things. But as theft goes, this is not that big of a deal. Like this is an MDF board, man. Like there are thousands of them on a building site, so you know what they're gonna do? They're gonna go, Dave, cut another MDF board with too short or whatever, right? And it'll take them 5 minutes to cut one. So again, worked on building sites. Generally, that's how it works, right? Yeah, don't steal things, but as thefts go, dude, don't beat yourself up too much. Anyway. And you got your comeuppance. That's the main thing. You like the universe absolutely gave you your comeuppance. So that sounded really unpleasant. Sunburn underneath your nose, man. Nah, not for me. Anyway, I hate sunburn, but I love you all a long time. I will speak to you tomorrow for some more 40k Rantage, where we're going to discuss how you, i.e., yes, you, would fix 11th edition. Aye, I've gotten a few emails about that, and as I started reading them, I thought, maybe it's time to do a video on this. So we'll do that tomorrow. It's not going to be how you're going to fix 40k in general, but just 11th edition. So I'll see you then. Have a good one. Bye now.